Welcome to Reddit's for Sleep, where your nights get quieter, one story at a time. Every evening, we bring you handpicked Reddit stories narrated in a calm, soothing voice to help you relax, unwind, and drift off. If you enjoy peaceful nights with just the right storytelling pace, you're in the right place. So, before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Reddit's for Sleep so you never miss your nightly escape. Now, get cozy and let the first story begin. Story 1. He left me out of his will after 27 years, so I gave him the life he deserved. I met Harold when I was 26. It was one of those odd meetings that happens when you're not looking for anything. I had just finalized my divorce. Messy, painful, the kind that makes you question everything you ever believed about love. I was emotionally drained, financially unstable, and sleeping in the spare bedroom at my sister's place when a friend dragged me to a community book club just to get out of the house. That's where I met him. Harold was quiet, not in a rude or standoffish way, just the kind of quiet that's deeply aware. The kind of man who listens fully when you speak, nods slowly, and thinks before he replies. He had silver streaks in his hair, always wore this brown cardigan with frayed elbows, and he smelled faintly like cedar and old paperbacks. I liked that. It made him feel safe. Over the weeks, we started sitting closer. Then we started going for coffee after book club, then lunches, then weekend walks through the botanical gardens. He never tried to rush me, never once acted like he expected anything from me, just presence, just time. He told me he was widowed. His wife, Anna, had passed 10 years prior. He didn't speak much about her, but when he did, it was with a kind of reverent sadness that made me love him more. The kind of sadness that said he truly loved once and lost, but was still open. We started dating slowly. My friends joked that I was dating my retirement plan, but they didn't know what it felt like to be with someone who didn't make me second-guess myself. Harold never yelled, never manipulated. He remembered how I liked my tea. He read every article I sent him. He learned the names of my coworkers. After 2 years, I moved in with him. He had a charming little house on the edge of town, white brick with a wraparound porch and a garden full of weeds I started clearing out one Sunday at a time. I planted lavender first, then rosemary, then daisies. Little pieces of me. We never married. He said he'd been through the wedding part before, and it didn't matter now. He told me he loved me every day, held me every night. What more did I need? I agreed. Love felt enough. The years passed in rhythms. I quit my job at the publishing house when Harold needed more help at home. His health started to falter. At first it was little things, forgetting his keys, sleeping longer, then the stroke. That's when everything changed. Suddenly, I was his caregiver. I fed him, bathed him, changed his sheets, gave him medication on a strict schedule. It wasn't glamorous, but it was love. I stayed through the frustration, through the crying, through the embarrassing moments he wished I hadn't seen. I told him I'd seen worse. He didn't believe me, but he smiled anyway. I was there when he fell in the bathroom at 3 a.m. and split his head open. I was there when he forgot my name for 2 whole days, then cried in my lap when it came back to him. I was there when his son called after a year of silence to ask about some old investment account and didn't even ask how Harold was doing. I was always there. 27 years of being there. Then one morning, Harold didn't wake up. He passed away sometime in the night. Peacefully, the blanket was pulled up to his chest. His hands were folded. There was a stillness in the room that didn't feel like grief yet. It felt like silence, like someone had taken the last breath out of the house. I handled the arrangements. His son flew in 2 days later and acted like he was the only one grieving. I didn't argue. I stayed quiet, made the calls, signed the forms. The funeral was simple. Beautiful. I played his favorite jazz records in the background and read a poem he used to underline in his books. Then came the will. It was a Wednesday afternoon, warm outside. I remember because I wore a sleeveless dress and the receptionist offered me tea. The lawyer handed us both copies of the will and began to read. Everything was left to his son. The house, the bank accounts, the car, the insurance, the furniture, the art, the retirement fund, even the dog. On paper, it was like I had never existed. 27 years of life, erased with silence. I didn't cry. Not there, at least. I went home that night, his home, apparently, and stared at the garden. The lavender was blooming. It always bloomed this time of year. I sat on the porch swing until the sun disappeared and the mosquitoes came. Then I packed a small bag and left for my sister's. I spent 2 days crying, not just from heartbreak, but betrayal. Harold had looked me in the eyes just 3 weeks before and told me I'd be okay. Told me not to worry about the future. Told me he'd taken care of everything. He lied. Or maybe he just didn't follow through. Maybe he meant to update the will and never got around to it. Maybe his son convinced him otherwise. Maybe I'll never know. But that didn't make it right. I called a lawyer. I gathered every receipt I had, every photo, every signed hospital form, every bank transaction that proved I'd been contributing. I had journals with dates, voice notes, messages, cards Harold had written to me calling me his partner, his caregiver, his love. I filed a palimony suit. It was slow. Months of hearings, depositions. Harold's son fought hard, said I was just a girlfriend, a glorified roommate, a gold digger. He tried to discredit me at every turn, but I stayed calm, patient, let the truth speak louder than his anger. Neighbors testified for me. So did nurses. So did Harold's best friend, who said Harold once told him I was the only reason he got through the last decade. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. I was awarded the house, half the estate, and full custody of the dog. Harold's son stormed out of the courtroom and never contacted me again. I didn't care. The point wasn't the money. It was acknowledgement. It was fairness. It was justice for the years of my life I gave, without ever being asked to. I still live in that house. I keep Harold's cardigan on the coat rack. I water the lavender. I sit on the porch swing on Sunday mornings and sip tea. And I remember him. But I remember myself, too. I remember that I stayed. That I loved with my whole being. That I gave him peace in his last years, and dignity and warmth. That matters. Even if it wasn't written down in his will, it was written in our life. And now, the world knows it too. Story 2. My sister cut me off over a man, then showed up 9 years later with a secret. My sister Mia and I were close once, not just in the way sisters usually are, but deeply, instinctively, like we were born with matching souls. We used to sleep in the same bed during thunderstorms, eat the same cereal every morning, and finish each other's sentences. We were only 2 years apart, and somehow that small gap disappeared as we got older. People used to say we were twins in spirit, and maybe that's why the silence that followed hurt more than anything I'd ever felt. It started when she met Daniel. He was charming, sure, the kind of man who knows how to walk into a room and pull everyone's attention without saying much. But beneath that charm was something slippery, a smugness that never sat well with me. I never said anything, though. I didn't want to be the overprotective sister. I told myself I was being paranoid. They got serious quickly. Within 3 months, they were living together. Within 6, they were engaged. I tried to be supportive, helped her pick dresses, flowers, all of it. But every time I saw the way he looked at her, like she was a prize to be displayed, and not a person, something inside me tensed. Then came the night everything broke. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I had just come home from work. Exhausted. Mia called and asked if I could come over. She sounded off. I drove over with takeout and found her sitting on the couch, mascara smudged, blanket over her lap. Daniel wasn't home. She confessed that he'd been controlling lately, watching her spending, making comments about her clothes, telling her she was lucky someone like him wanted to settle down. I told her she didn't have to marry him. That love wasn't supposed to feel like fear. She nodded quietly, said she needed to think. 2 days later, she called again, this time screaming, accusing me of trying to ruin her relationship. Said Daniel told her I was jealous, that I was bitter and alone and wanted to sabotage her happiness. I tried to calm her down, to remind her of what she told me that night on the couch, but she hung up. That was the last time I heard her voice for 9 years. I left voicemails, sent emails, birthday texts, all ignored. She blocked me everywhere. I grieved her like she died, not suddenly, but slowly, every Christmas without her, every family photo where I had to smile without her next to me. Our parents tried to reach out too, but she cut everyone off except for Daniel. Time passed. I got a new job, new apartment, new life. I stopped hoping she'd call. I told myself some wounds don't heal, that not all stories end in reunions. Until last November. I was walking out of a bookstore when I saw her. Standing by a streetlight, same hazel eyes, but thinner, tired. She wore a long coat and was holding the hand of a little boy. At first, I froze. Then she saw me. She whispered something to the boy and walked toward me. I didn't move. I didn't know how. We stood there in silence for a long time, 9 years of words stuck in my throat. She said, "Can we talk?" I nodded. We went to a quiet cafe. She ordered tea. I didn't even drink mine. The boy, her son, she said, was waiting in the car with a friend. She didn't say whose friend. She looked over her shoulder a lot. Her hands trembled. Then she told me everything. Daniel had isolated her from everyone. The control turned to emotional abuse and then physical. He monitored her devices, controlled her finances, told her lies about me, that I was unstable, that I had said horrible things about her, that I hated her. She believed him for years. He convinced her that I betrayed her, and she needed to believe it. Because if I had her best interest at heart, then she would have to face what he really was. They had a son, and the abuse got worse after that. She left 2 weeks before we met on that sidewalk. She was staying at a friend's house, off the grid, no job yet, no money, just her and the boy. She looked at me, eyes full of regret, and asked for forgiveness. I couldn't speak, not at first. Then I reached across the table and held her hand. And for a second we were just Mia and me again, 2 little girls on the same team. I took her and her son in. She stayed in my spare room. Slowly, day by day, we started stitching things back together. At night, after her son went to bed, we'd sit on the couch and talk like we used to. She apologized again and again. I cried more than I thought I would. But it wasn't just grief anymore. It was relief. She filed for full custody, got a lawyer. Our parents helped with school supplies, therapy sessions, meals. It became a family project to help her rebuild. She's not the same sister I knew, but in some ways, she's stronger, wiser, gentler. And I'm not the same either. I know now that love can survive even the ugliest storms, that sometimes the people we lose come back, not as who they were, but as who they were, always meant to become. Some nights, I still wake up expecting silence, but then I hear her laugh in the kitchen, or her son asking where I am. And I remember that sometimes forgiveness is the beginning of something even deeper than love. It's healing, and it's home. Story 3. I accidentally uncovered my husband's double life, but I let him keep it. We met at a train station. It sounds cliche, but it was one of those movie moment kind of meetings. He was running late, I'd dropped my book, and he stopped to hand it back, even though he was clearly in a rush. His tie was crooked, and he had this warm, apologetic smile that made him look a little boyish, despite being at least in his mid-30s. We ended up on the same train car. He asked what I was reading. I asked what kind of job made him wear a full suit and look that panicked at 8:15 in the morning. We talked the whole ride. That was how it started. He introduced himself as Thomas Green. He worked in international logistics, he said. Not the most glamorous job, but he made it sound like art. He told me about late-night shipments to Spain, customs clearance in Tokyo, missed connections in Johannesburg. He had stories for everything. He was funny, thoughtful, knew how to cook, and never once made me feel like I was too much. He proposed after 11 months, and I said yes before the ring box even opened fully. I moved into his townhouse a month after that. For the next 6 years, I was happy, not just content, actually happy. We didn't fight much. He traveled for work now and then, which I didn't mind. I had a flexible job in publishing, and I liked my alone time. He always brought back gifts. Lavender soap from France, honey from Italy, a painting from Chile. I decorated our guest room with little trinkets from his trips. Sometimes he'd disappear for 2 or 3 days. Said he was in a remote area or his phone had died. I believed him. I trusted him. He was the most dependable person I knew. Or so I thought. The unraveling started with a pair of socks. I was doing laundry and found a tiny sock, one meant for a toddler, not the kind you buy as a joke or a souvenir. The kind that's been worn, soft, slightly stained at the bottom, real. We didn't have kids. We weren't even trying. He'd said he wasn't ready yet, and I didn't press. At first I thought maybe it had gotten mixed in at the laundromat, or maybe it belonged to one of our neighbor's kids who came over for a dinner party. But something about it felt too intimate, too personal. I put it in the drawer and didn't say anything. 2 weeks later, I noticed a recurring $300 charge from a payment app I didn't recognize. I confronted him. He said it was for a freelance shipping assistant. That logistics work sometimes required off-the-record help. That sounded strange, but I let it go. Until I saw a notification pop up on his iPad, a birthday reminder. It said, "Liam turns 4 today." I didn't know a Liam. I stared at that little reminder for a long time. He was in the shower. I didn't move until the water stopped. When he came out, I asked him calmly if he had a child. His face drained of color. There was no yelling, no dramatic confrontation. I just watched his hands tremble as he sat down on the edge of the bed, and he confessed. He had a second life, not a secret family. He wasn't married to her. But he had been in a long-term relationship before me that had never truly ended. He stayed in touch. They had a child together, a son. He hadn't told me because he thought he would lose me. And maybe he was right. Maybe if he had told me at the beginning, I would have run. I didn't want to be part of someone else's leftover heartbreak. I didn't want to share. But now it had been 6 years. Now we had built something, a home, a life. I asked him, "Do you love her?" He shook his head immediately, said it was complicated, but no, that he never wanted to go back, that he just didn't know how to do the right thing without blowing everything up. I didn't scream. I asked him to leave for the night. He did. I spent that night on the couch, watching the light on the oven blink. I didn't cry. I wasn't sure if I was numb, or if I had known deep down and just chose not to see it. The next morning, I called in sick and took a walk. 5 miles, just thinking. When I got home, I called him. I told him I wasn't leaving, but I needed honesty, complete, ugly, vulnerable truth from this point forward, that I wasn't going to be blindsided again, that if we were going to continue, I had to know everything. He told me the full story. The mother's name was Alana. They dated for 3 years. She got pregnant after they broke up. He tried to make it work, but they were toxic together. She didn't want him around much, didn't trust him, so he sent money, stayed involved from a distance, visited when allowed. But the child was his. And he loved that boy. That part was clear. I asked to meet Liam. It took 3 months, but Alana agreed. He was shy, big brown eyes like Thomas, a soft voice. He handed me a drawing of a robot with 3 arms and said, "That's you," pointing at one of the arms. Something in my heart cracked. We've been in therapy since then, all 3 of us actually. Alana and I will never be friends, but we're civil, coexisting. Thomas and I were rebuilding. It's not perfect. Some days I look at him and remember the lie, the choice he made to keep me in the dark. And it stings. But some part of me also respects the way he's trying now, the brutal transparency, the way he owns what he did without defensiveness, how he's working to be a father and a partner the right way. There's no fairy tale ending here, no dramatic justice or revenge. Just a woman who found out the man she loves had a secret. And instead of running, she sat with it, held it, let it breathe. And maybe that's love too, the kind that doesn't always look like it does in movies, but still survives, still holds on, still chooses to stay. Story 4. I fired my best friend. After 14 years, she still doesn't know it was me. We started the business with 2 laptops and a table in our garage. Back then, it was all we had. That and a shared dream to build something of our own. I handled client outreach and logistics. She was the creative side design, branding, marketing campaigns. We complemented each other perfectly, in business and in life. We weren't just best friends. We were more than sisters in a way. She knew everything about me, my mom's drinking problem, my first heartbreak, the way I still sleep with music on to drown out silence. We had matching tattoos from a spontaneous trip to Thailand. She was the maid of honor at my wedding. I was there when she buried her dog. 14 years. 14 years of inside jokes, cross-country work trips, late nights launching client websites with Chinese takeout and cold coffee. 14 years of building something that finally started to mean something. By year 10, we had 15 employees, an office space downtown, and a reputation in our city as the creative duo everyone wanted to hire. We had awards, recognition, revenue, and cracks. It started small. She began missing meetings, blamed burnout. I told her to take a few days off. She did, but it kept happening. Then came the attitude shifts. She became snappy, impatient, almost dismissive, especially with the younger women we'd hired, many of whom had once idolized her. Then I started hearing whispers from the team, from clients, that she was showing up late to calls, not following up, missing deliverables, that she'd ask interns to cover for her, that she was not quite herself. I confronted her once, gently. She brushed me off. Everyone burns out. I'm just, tired. You've done it too. I nodded. I had, but I bounced back. She didn't. 6 months later, we lost a major client, a 6-figure contract, one we'd worked hard to land. They said we missed deadlines, that feedback wasn't being implemented. I was shocked. I had no idea. Until I checked the project folders. Half the documents were untouched. She'd been assigned as lead, and nothing was done. I brought it up again. This time, more seriously. She got defensive, accused me of micromanaging, said I was jealous that she was the face of the company, and I was always in the background. I stood there, stunned. It was like looking at someone I didn't know. Weeks passed. I asked her to step back for a while, unpaid leave, just to give space. She refused. Said if I wanted her out, I'd have to force it. So I did. Quietly. Strategically. I spoke to our lawyer. We'd incorporated as a partnership years ago, but I had majority stake by a narrow margin, something we had agreed to, because I had put up more money at the beginning. I had the right to vote her out under the terms we both signed and filed. I didn't want to do it, but the business was bleeding. I gathered every report, every missed file, every formal client complaint. I met with our board and advisors. I presented the evidence. They agreed unanimously. The papers were served 2 weeks later. She didn't believe it at first. She called me, furious, screaming, accusing me of betrayal. I listened. I didn't argue. I let her say what she needed to say. Then I told her everything. That this wasn't sudden. That I'd begged her for a year to come back, to show up, to care. That I still loved her. But I loved the company and our employees too. And I couldn't let one person's spiral take us all down. She went silent. And then she hung up. That was the last time we spoke. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how she told people that I'd stolen the company, that I pushed her out of her own dream, that I'd backstabbed her for power. People believed it. Some still do. They don't know the nights I stayed late cleaning up her mistakes, the times I rewrote entire proposals under her name to keep our reputation alive, the months I watched my best friend disappear into someone I didn't recognize. They don't know I cried signing those papers. It's been 2 years. The company's thriving again. We've hired new talent, won new clients, built systems that work. There's laughter in the office now. Stability. But sometimes, when I pass by that old Thai restaurant we used to love, or hear a certain song we always played in the car on the way to conferences, I think of her, of who she used to be, of who I used to be, when we still believed we'd grow old running this thing together. She'll probably never know the full story, and I've made peace with that. But in the quiet moments late at night, when the house is still, I sometimes whisper it into the dark. Anyway, not because she'll hear it, but because I need to remember I tried. I really did. Story 5. My dad's secret life showed up at his funeral and sat in the front row. My father wasn't a warm man. Not cruel, not cold, just quiet, distant, the kind of man who existed more than he lived. He paid the bills on time, mowed the lawn every Sunday, and nodded more than he spoke. My mom used to say, "Your dad shows love in his own way," which usually meant acts of service instead of affection. He never missed a piano recital, but he also never told me he was proud. He bought me my first car, but never once gave me advice on boys, college, or life. He was always there, but only halfway. A silhouette of a father. Growing up, I learned not to expect much from him emotionally. He went to work, came home, had dinner, watched the news, and repeated. The only times I ever saw him animated were when he was fixing something. A squeaky cabinet door, a leaky faucet, an old radio. He liked problems with clear solutions. Emotions were too messy for him. He passed away from a heart attack 3 weeks after his 68th birthday. Mom found him slumped over the kitchen table with a half-written grocery list in front of him. He died the same way he lived quietly, without drama. No drawn-out hospital stays. No goodbyes. Just gone. I wasn't ready for how hard it hit me. Even though we weren't especially close, he was still my dad. His silence had become part of the background noise of my life, and suddenly, it was gone. No more nods from across the room. No more methodical pacing of his boots in the hallway. Just silence. We planned a modest funeral. He would have hated anything grand. We booked a small church, invited family, and close friends. My mother asked me to do the eulogy something short, respectful, not too emotional. I agreed. The day arrived. Rainy, fitting. Family trickled in. My cousins, some of his old co-workers, a few neighbors. The front 2 rows were reserved for family. My mom, my brother, and I took our seats. I turned around occasionally, nodding politely to each new face. Until I saw her. A woman, early 40s maybe, tall, dark curly hair, modest navy dress, holding the hand of a young girl, maybe 10, maybe 11 with my father's eyes. I froze. My skin went cold. They sat in the very front row, 2 seats away from my mother. No one seemed to recognize them. My mom leaned in and whispered, "Do you know who they are?" I shook my head slowly. I spent the entire service stealing glances at them. The woman dabbed her eyes with a tissue. The girl clutched a small, worn teddy bear. They were grieving genuinely. Not there by mistake. Not crashing. They knew him. Mourned him. After the burial, people gathered for coffee and sandwiches at the church hall. I pulled the woman aside as gently as I could. "I'm sorry," I began. "But how did you know my dad?" She paused, tilted her head slightly, and then said the words I'll never forget. "He was my partner for 16 years. My mind didn't process it at first. I felt like I was hearing through water. I blinked. "You mean, like co-workers?" "No," she said softly. "I mean, he was my partner. We lived together, off and on, in Cape Town. He was a father to my daughter." She gestured toward the girl with the teddy bear. My knees nearly buckled. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. I wanted to cry. But all I did was ask, "How?" She explained everything, calmly, respectfully. She didn't come to create drama. She just wanted her daughter, my father's daughter, to say goodbye. He had 2 lives. One with us, the other in another city where he traveled for work every other weekend. We thought he was consulting for his old firm. We never asked for details. He was always so structured, so predictable. Why would we question it? But in those weekends away, he was with her, with them. They had a small apartment, a routine. He paid rent, bought groceries, taught the little girl how to ride a bike, helped with math homework. She had known about us, the other family. She said he told her early on that he had kids, a wife, that he wasn't leaving. She'd accepted that and stayed for years. I walked away. I didn't speak to anyone for the rest of the gathering. My mother didn't find out until 2 days later, when I finally told her. She sat in silence for over an hour. No tears. Just silence. Then she said, "I always knew he kept parts of himself locked away. I just didn't realize how many." The girl, my half-sister, I guess, wrote me a letter the following week. It was childlike, messy handwriting. She said she was sorry if her being at the funeral upset anyone, but she just wanted to say goodbye to the man who taught me how to build birdhouses. I stared at those words for a long time. I don't know what hurts more, the betrayal or the realization that he was capable of love, just not all in one place. There's a small part of me that envies her. She got the version of him that showed up, that built things, that sat on the floor and told stories. I got the ghost, the outline, the safe, quiet man who never let me in. I haven't responded to her letter yet. I don't hate the girl or the woman. I don't even hate him. I just feel hollow, like my entire childhood was built on sand. I don't know if I'll ever be ready to meet them again, but I kept the letter. Sometimes, late at night, I read it and wonder who else my father was in the spaces we never saw. Story 6. I gave up my inheritance to my brother, then found out what he did with it. Growing up, my little brother was everything to me. We were 4 years apart, but I always said we were twins in the heart. He followed me everywhere, to the creek behind our house, to the corner store for slushies, even to the library when I started obsessing over history books. He'd sit next to me, legs swinging, listening like every word I said mattered. Our parents worked hard. Dad was a mechanic, Mom was a nurse. We didn't have much, but what we had felt solid. Warm meals, holiday traditions, laughter in the hallway. Nothing extravagant, just safe. Just enough. When I turned 16, my dad took me aside one day, handed me a small envelope and said, "We're putting something aside for you and your brother, for your futures. It's not much, but one day it'll matter." I didn't open it then. I just nodded, folded it into my drawer, and forgot about it. By the time I was in university, Dad's health had begun to fail. Long years of breathing in fumes at the workshop had caught up to him. Then, right after I graduated, cancer took him fast and cruel. The funeral was quiet. Mom stood like stone. My brother was 17. He cried into my shoulder for hours. A month later, Mom sat us down with the lawyer. Dad had left behind a modest inheritance, 2 investment accounts, some savings, and the house. Nothing enormous, but enough to split between us. That's when my brother said something that stunned me. "I want to open a garage. In Dad's name." He said it with fire in his voice, determined, tears in his eyes. He wanted to carry on Dad's legacy. Not just work at a shop, but own one. Build it from the ground up. Paint Dad's name on the door. Make something lasting. I could have taken my half. I had student loans, rent, a beat-up car that needed more repairs than it was worth. But I didn't. Instead, I looked at my mom, then at my brother, and said, "Give him everything. He needs this more than I do." He argued at first, said he couldn't accept that, but I insisted. I told him I'd figure things out. I always did. And so, he took the inheritance. Every cent of it. At first, things seemed fine. He enrolled in a business course, got a part-time job at a local shop to learn the ropes. I helped him sketch logo ideas and brainstorm names. Mason's Motors was the favorite. Clean, personal, real. Then he met Jules. She was magnetic, the kind of woman who made rooms go quiet when she walked in. Bold lipstick, fast words, loud laugh. At first, I thought she was just a phase, someone he'd date for a season and move on. But suddenly, she was everywhere, calling shots, talking about investments and branding strategies, encouraging him to think bigger, no more garage, no more small-town business. "I want him to franchise," she told me one afternoon, unprompted, swirling wine in a glass she'd brought to my apartment without asking. "He's got potential. Why waste it on a dingy little workshop?" I didn't respond, but I remember something sour rising in my throat. Months passed. My brother stopped answering texts as often, stopped showing up for family dinners. When he did come, he was distant, distracted. I asked how the garage was going. He mumbled something vague and changed the subject. Then I found out through a mutual friend. The inheritance was gone. Not invested, not used for a garage. Gone. Turns out, he'd followed Jules into a string of high-risk crypto schemes and luxury e-commerce ventures she swore would 10x their money. None of them worked. Most were likely scams. They lost everything. When I confronted him, he cried. Broke down in my apartment doorway like he was 10 years old again. Said he was sorry. Said he didn't know what he was thinking. Said he felt like a failure, like he'd ruined Dad's name. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask how he could throw away what I gave up, what Dad saved, what Mom quietly watched disappear. But I didn't. Instead, I made tea. sat with him in silence, let him cry. Because here's the thing. I gave him the money, yes. But more than that, I gave him trust. And he lost that too. It's been over a year since that night. Jules is gone, left him. The second things went south. He's back in town now, working part-time at a hardware store, living with a friend. He's quieter, paler, but also maybe wiser. We talk more now, slowly. He doesn't make promises anymore. He just shows up, fixes things around Mom's house, picks up groceries, leaves handwritten notes on my fridge with dumb jokes, the way he used to when we were kids. He told me last week that he wants to start again, smaller this time. A mobile mechanic service. Just him, his truck, and a dream. I told him I couldn't help financially. That bridge is burned. But I'd help him build the website. Print flyers. Spread the word. Sometimes people ask me if I regret giving up my share. If I wish I'd been selfish. And the truth is, no. Because giving means nothing if it only works out when it's safe. Sometimes you give knowing the fall might come. And when it does, all you can do is help them learn how to stand again. One piece at a time. Story 7. My husband took a DNA test for fun and unraveled the life I thought we had. He was laughing when he opened the kit. I remember it so clearly. We were sitting in the living room on a lazy Saturday afternoon. One of those mellow golden hours where everything feels harmless. He'd seen an ad for one of those ancestry DNA tests online and said, "Let's do it. Might be cool to know where I come from." He always joked that he was part Viking, part troublemaker. I teased him that he was probably 100% suburban dad. We both ordered kits. We spit in the tubes, sealed them up, mailed them off. Neither of us thought much of it after that. Life continued. Work, dinner routines, lazy weekends, walks with the dog, married for 9 years, together for 12. We were settled, comfortable, safe. Or so I thought. The results came in 3 weeks later. He opened his first, sitting across from me on the couch, smiling. "Let's see if I'm royalty," he joked. And then he went quiet. The smile faded, his brow furrowed. He blinked, scrolled, blinked again. "What is it?" I asked. He just handed me the phone. Under the close family matches was a name neither of us had ever heard before. A name marked, parent 50% match. Not his mom, not his dad, but a man, a stranger. I laughed at first, thinking maybe it was an error, but he didn't laugh with me. He just stared at the floor like the ground had opened up. "That's not my dad," he whispered. We sat in silence for a long time. When he finally spoke, it came out slowly, like each word weighed something. He told me his parents had always had a rocky marriage, lots of fights behind closed doors, but he never imagined his mother had kept something this big. That the man who raised him, the man who taught him how to ride a bike, grilled steaks every Sunday, showed up to every game, might not actually be his father. He called his mom that night. She denied it at first, laughed it off, said those tests weren't reliable. But when he pressed, her voice cracked. Then she went silent. And finally, she admitted it. Yes. She had a brief affair in the spring of 1986. A man she worked with. A mistake, she said. Something she regretted instantly. Her husband never knew. And when she found out she was pregnant, she told no one. Not even the man she had been with. She buried it. Chose to move on. Chose to raise her son as her husband's. My husband was shaking when he hung up. I held him for hours that night. But that was just the beginning. Because once the door to secrets opens, it never closes cleanly. He started researching the man, his biological father, found him online. a business consultant living 3 hours away, married, grown kids, a life. He debated for weeks about reaching out. I told him I'd support whatever choice he made. I could see how badly he needed closure, even if he didn't say it out loud. So he sent an email. Short, polite, respectful. And the man responded. They met for coffee. What he told me later broke something inside me that still hasn't quite healed. The man admitted he remembered his mother, said he had suspected, even hoped that one day someone might come forward, that he'd thought of him, dreamed about him, that he'd wanted to know him. They started seeing each other regularly, getting to know one another, comparing habits, quirks, similarities. At first, I encouraged it. I wanted him to heal, to fill the gap in his identity. But then something shifted. He started pulling away. He began talking about how strange it felt, how his whole life had been a lie, how maybe his marriage was just another safe choice, like everything else, how he didn't know who he really was anymore. I didn't understand. I thought we were solid. We had built a life, a home. We laughed. We shared routines, memories, late-night snacks. But the doubt had crept in. He started staying out later. Spoke less. Got defensive over little things. Said he needed space to think. Then, one day, he told me he was moving out. Said he wasn't sure he was the man he used to be. That this revelation made him want to reevaluate everything. That maybe the life we had built wasn't what he truly wanted, that maybe it was built on someone else's foundation. I asked him if he still loved me. He didn't answer. Just looked away. He packed a bag, took the dog, said he'd come by later for the rest. That was 8 months ago. I still live in the same house, same walls, same kitchen table where we did the DNA kits. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if I should have stopped him, fought harder. But how do you fight something that's been buried for decades? Something that shook the ground beneath his entire sense of self. He texts me sometimes. Updates about the dog, the occasional memory. It's civil, but distant. Like we're characters from a story we both stopped reading. I kept my own DNA results sealed. I don't want to know anymore. Some truths aren't answers. They're wrecking balls. And once they swing, nothing stands quite the same again. Story 8. I found my best friend's diary and discovered a secret that changed everything. We had been inseparable since childhood. Emma and I were the kind of friends people envied 2 peas in a pod, matching backpacks, inside jokes no one else understood. We shared everything, or so I thought. Sleepovers, first crushes, heartbreaks, family dramas. There was nothing she wouldn't tell me. Or so I believed. When Emma moved out last summer, she left her old apartment cluttered with boxes and memories. One afternoon, while helping her pack, I stumbled upon a small, leather-bound diary tucked under her bed. It wasn't locked. It wasn't hidden with urgency. Just forgotten. I hesitated. The thought of reading her private words felt wrong, but curiosity crept in. Just 1 page, I told myself. Just to see what she wrote about her new job, her new city. Maybe how excited she was. I opened it. The pages were filled with raw honesty, her fears, her dreams, her daily life. But then, the entries took a darker turn. She wrote about feeling isolated, overwhelmed, and most shocking of all, about someone she feared. His name was Mark. He was her boyfriend. I knew Mark as the charming guy she'd introduced at a barbecue, the one who always seemed a little too interested in her phone, a little too quick to dismiss her friend's concerns. But Emma had laughed off any warning signs. Said he was complicated, but loving. The diary painted a different picture. Mark was controlling, jealous. He'd text her nonstop, accuse her of lying, check her messages, show up uninvited. She felt trapped. afraid to tell anyone, especially me, because she thought I'd judge her or pressure her to leave. The entries became more desperate over time. Descriptions of arguments that left her shaking, nights spent hiding in the bathroom just to breathe. She even wrote about a time he pushed her against a wall, and she feared it would escalate. I put the diary down, heart pounding. I didn't know what to do. Should I confront Emma? Tell her I knew? Should I tell someone else? The police? But what if she wasn't ready? What if I shattered the fragile trust we had? Over the next few weeks, I tried to reach her. Called, texted, sent messages through mutual friends. She never responded. Finally, one evening, she showed up at my door. Pale, exhausted, but determined. She told me she had left Mark, packed a bag in the middle of the night, and stayed with a colleague until she could figure things out. We cried. We held each other. She apologized for hiding it, said she didn't want to burden me, that she was scared of what people would think. I told her she never had to hide anything from me, that I was there always. We went to the police together a few days later. Mark was arrested after a few more incidents. Emma is healing, slowly. Therapy, support groups, late-night phone calls with me. The diary is back in her hands now. She keeps it locked away, but sometimes she lets me read a page or two. It reminds me that even the closest people carry invisible battles, and that sometimes love is not enough without courage and a friend who refuses to let go. Story 9. I caught my wife secretly helping her ex and decided to join them. We met in college, fell in love fast, and married just 2 years after graduation. Life was smooth. At first, steady jobs, small apartment, lazy Sundays with coffee and jazz music. We built a routine we both liked. She was kind, funny, and fiercely loyal. Or so I thought. One evening, about 4 years into our marriage, I noticed her phone buzzing late. She excused herself quickly, but the name on the screen caught my eye. Mike. Mike was her ex-boyfriend, someone I had only met a handful of times at social gatherings. I never liked him much, mostly because he seemed to hover in the background, and I always felt a strange tension when he was around. Curiosity got the better of me, and later that night, while she was asleep, I checked her messages. What I found surprised me. She was secretly helping Mike, not in a romantic way, but in a way that made me question everything. Mike was struggling, lost his job, facing eviction, sinking into depression. She had been sending him money, helping with job applications, even coordinating with his landlord to prevent eviction. She never told me. Instead of feeling betrayed, I felt a strange mixture of admiration and unease. When I confronted her, she confessed everything without hesitation. She said Mike was like a brother to her, someone she couldn't just abandon despite the past. We argued, yes, about boundaries, trust, and transparency. But then I realized something. Mike needed us both. So I reached out to him. We met over coffee. What started as a tense conversation turned into a genuine connection. I saw the man my wife had been trying to save. Broken, but hopeful. Over the next months, we formed an unusual but powerful team. My wife Mike and I worked together to rebuild Mike's life. I helped with job training. She provided emotional support. Slowly, Mike regained his footing. Our marriage evolved too. We learned that sometimes love isn't just about two people, but about creating space for those we care about, even when it challenges everything we thought we knew. It wasn't easy, and not everyone understood. But in the end, it brought us closer in a way I never expected. Because sometimes family is what you choose to make it. Story 10. I discovered my mom's hidden past, and it changed how I see her forever. I always thought I knew my mom, inside and out. She was the kind of woman who showed up without fail. She was there when I woke up, packed my lunches, picked me up from school, and stayed up late, helping me study for exams. She was a fixture in our neighborhood, friendly, dependable, never one to stir trouble. To me, she was simply Mom. A steady presence that never wavered, a quiet strength that carried us all through tough times. But sometimes, even the closest people keep secrets that live in the shadows, just waiting for the right moment to step into the light. It all started last autumn. I was cleaning out the attic, a chore I'd been putting off for months. The house felt quiet, the kind of stillness that makes every creak and sigh louder than usual. Dust floated like tiny clouds in the fading sunlight. I was halfway through stacking old boxes when I noticed a small, battered trunk shoved in the corner, beneath a pile of forgotten coats. Curious, I pulled it out and wiped off the thick layer of dust. The lock was rusty, but gave way with a little force. Inside, I found stacks of letters tied with faded ribbons, black and white photographs curled at the edges, and a small leather-bound journal. The handwriting on the letters was elegant, looping, almost poetic. The photographs showed a young woman I barely recognized, not the tired but loving mom I knew, but a radiant girl with wild eyes and a carefree smile. She wore leather jackets, rode motorcycles, and had the kind of reckless confidence that seemed foreign to the woman who spent her evenings knitting and watching TV. My heart quickened. Who was this woman? What stories did these letters hold? That night, I sat in my room, the box beside me, and began reading the letters. They were love letters, passionate, raw, filled with hopes and dreams and promises. The writer was a man named Daniel. They talked about the future, about freedom, about living life on their own terms. It was like I'd uncovered an alternate universe, one where my mom was young and fearless, chasing dreams instead of paying bills and making dinner. The more I read, the more I realized how much she had sacrificed. The next day, I found her in the kitchen, humming softly as she chopped vegetables. The familiar scent of rosemary and garlic filled the air. "Mom," I began hesitantly. "I found some things in the attic. Old photos and letters. About Daniel. Can we talk?" She froze for a moment, knife midair. Then she smiled a sad, distant smile. "Come sit with me," she said quietly. We sat at the kitchen table, the afternoon light casting gentle shadows around us. She told me about her 20s, a time I had only glimpsed in fragments through old stories or faded photographs. She had dreamed of being a musician, played guitar in a small band that performed in smoky bars and underground clubs. Daniel was her first love, a poet and an artist who saw the world in colors she couldn't even name. Together, they had planned to leave their small town and travel the world. She spoke of late-night talks about Paris, New York, and endless highways. But life, as it often does, took an unexpected turn. A car accident took Daniel away just weeks before they were supposed to leave. The grief broke her in ways I couldn't begin to imagine. She said she felt like a bird with clipped wings, forced to settle into a life she hadn't chosen. Her dreams faded, replaced by the reality of bills, responsibilities, and raising me and my siblings. She paused, her eyes glistening with tears she did shed. "I buried that life deep, honey," she whispered. "It was too painful to carry. So I built a new one for you, for the family." Listening to her, I felt the weight of years pressing down on my chest. I saw her not just as my mom, but as a woman who had loved deeply, lost fiercely, and endured quietly. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the lives we live, the ones we show the world, and the ones we keep locked inside. I understood, for the first time, the true meaning of strength. That's all for tonight. If these stories helped you unwind, I'd truly appreciate, and like it helps more people find peaceful sleep too. And if you want more like this, subscribe to Reddit's for sleep. We're here every night with new stories to drift off to. Have a peaceful night, sweet dreams, and I'll see you in the next one.